Hello and welcome to another episode of Hometown Hauntings. I'm Stephanie from Ghost City Tours, and today we are joined by one of our guides from Las Vegas. So, Alan, welcome to the show.
Hi.
Hey,
Great to
Alan.
be here.
Awesome. We're happy to have you here today.
Thank
Can
you.
you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became a guide with us?
Well, I've always been fascinated with the strange and unusual, but from the historical point of view. I grew up in Michigan, and Michigan has a lot of history, and Detroit being part of the 1812 War and uh, the Native Americans, and that it's just a lot of history in that area. I fell in love with the Civil War and all the aspects, and became a Civil War reenactor about 1992. I was in the movie Gettysburg. I
Oh,
was a background artist. It was the first thing I actually got to do. And man, you talk about going to the summit on your first trip. I got involved in national park documentaries. I was part of a team that helped make some films for Antietam and for Charlottesville. I've got film credits for that. So when my family needed us to move to Las Vegas from Michigan, my passion for history continued. And I had a business associate that totally unrelated to history. She said, "Hey, I'm going to be doing some tour guiding down at the Grand Canyon. Would you like to try that?" Well, my full-time job is selling cars, and if you know anything about car dealerships, they keep a pretty tight leash on you. And my time available wasn't really going to work out for Grand Canyon. But he said, "Let's try Ghost City tours. Do you like that?" I said, "Oh, of course I love history," and I had no idea how rich that area that we do our tour in, just in the few blocks that we walk, is so rich in not only Las Vegas history because it's where it started,
mhm.
but in the murders, the gang related, the mob, just the whole story behind Las Vegas. And I embraced it. And we do a tour. It's about an hour and a half. It's about a mile and a half. And I warn folks when they come up. And when we get done, the last story I tell, they're just blown away. They just have no idea. And a lot of them are locals, had no idea. So that's how I'm excited to be part of Ghost City Tours. And there's a few of us here, very few, that do the tours. So we're stretched kind of thin, but we enjoy it. Every tour is a new adventure, and they're always a little different.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's never the same tour twice.
Right.
And welcome to, I guess, to a fellow Midwesterner as well. I'm originally from Wisconsin, and usually people ask me if I'm from northern Minnesota or sometimes Canada. I mean, I'm fine with it. I'll own it, whatever. But it's funny when people are like, "Where are you from?" And then they're like, "What do you do?" It's never like I don't fit into any kind of a box.
Stephanie, I gotta tell you, selling cars,
Hmm.
I always mention the tour.
Oh, fun.
I'll be talking to people, they'll spend $130,000 on a Navigator, and I
Yeah.
say, "You can fit 7 people in that. Why don't you come down and see my tour downtown?" What do you do?
Yeah.
Ghost tours? Oh, that's so much fun. Yeah, we're gonna do that.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
come down and they're absolutely jaw dropped what our tour can do. I'm so proud of Ghost City Tours for that.
Oh, that's so awesome to hear. I don't really know much about Vegas. Doing these podcasts, I've learned so much about the different cities more than, I mean, I have a general idea across cities that I didn't go oversee, kind of a general idea of everything. But the more I talk to the guides from the city, I guess it's one of those things where if I would go on tour, I'd probably learn a lot more than just reading everything over and descriptions and things like that, because I think I know it, but I really don't. Do you prefer to do the adults only tour or the family friendly tour? And why is that?
Well, the adults only tour allowed me to bring my guests into a casino.
Mm-hmm.
We're a family friendly tour, and we very rarely get children that are underage uh,
Mm-hmm.
out at that age. And in Fremont Street, if you know anything about Fremont Street, you'll know what I'm talking about. Um, but we have to stay out of the casino
Mm-hmm.
for the family friendly. And I tone down the language and I keep some of the violent stuff out of it, but they still get a great tour. Now, one you mentioned about learning about the cities, I want to come back to that real quick. Everybody knows the name Las Vegas. I mean, you could go any part of the world and they go, oh, Las Vegas, Las Vegas.
Right.
So we talk about the history of Las Vegas. A lot of people don't know where that name came from. It was a Spanish missionary that was traveling the old Spanish Trail. You know, the Spaniards have been traveling in this part of the country for 500 years before any kind of big cities were out here.
Mm-hmm.
His name is Rafael Rivera. He was passing through this area. Now, Las Vegas is a very gradual valley. So the water that accumulates in the desert flows down into this area and accumulates, and this has underground springs.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that creates vegetation. He saw that vegetation and gravitated toward it, made a note on a map, and he wrote down Las Vegas, the Meadows. So it wasn't named by Elvis Presley or Frank Sinatra, or, you know, it's not just some catchy phrase.
Mm-hmm.
It's because they found what was not around anywhere else. And that's what created the city. Because most cities, I explained this on the tour, most
Mm-hmm.
cities start, you know, Chicago is on the lake.
Yeah.
Detroit is on the river. New York is on the Hudson.
Mm-hmm.
No river. There's no lake here. We just got a little bit of water. And the city sputtered in fits and starts, but it wasn't until the railroad showed up and a guy named William Clark decided to put a red light district in Las Vegas.
Smart move.
That cemented our place. And then, of course, Hoover Dam came in. I can go into all that detail, but I wanted you to just get a little taste of it. And that's what we talked about. And all the crazy stuff that resulted. And, of course, the paranormal that results from those negative things that happen here.
Yeah, yeah. That's so interesting. I'm sure there's people must come on tour, I'm assuming would be like myself and more of that. Tell me about, you know, the mob, the mafia, the prostitution, like the dirty side of everything. But I'm sure the history runs so much deeper and more rich than just probably what we see in the movies and depicted like that.
So much more. And I give them a taste. But the best thing that I can say to them is you are on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell you stories and incidents because you're actually standing on the spot where they happened or above or near them.
Mm-hmm.
Where you watch television and you go, yeah, it'd be fun to visit there. Oh, isn't that cool? But by building that story as a guide, I'm putting those visions in their head, and I bring props on my tour. There's a portion of the early Block 16, the original Sin City, and I have tokens for the prostitutes that you had to buy from, just like everything else in Vegas. You turn your money in and you get a chip. The idea is separate you from your money.
Right.
And you have this token, and if you want to be serviced by one of the ladies, that token's only good for that night. Otherwise,
use it or lose it.
You better use it or lose it. And bet you those guys used it. And that's what happened is these guys were farmers and ranchers and people, travelers that got off the train. These were not tourists. These are not people flying from California. This was early Vegas, 1905 through about 1935, where you were walking into a casino. There was sawdust on the floor. Up until 1938, you could ride a horse into a casino. That's what, and then a guy named Benny Binion, who we talk about on the tour. He was this aha moment for Vegas. Carpeted floors, gamblers that could bet $500 a hand in the 40s.
Yeah,
Don't hear of that. And they asked him. They said, Binion, why are you letting these people bet so much money? Aren't you afraid you're going to lose it all? He said, I can get more money, but I can't find more guys like him.
Mm-hmm.
I hope I'm not getting off track, but I really
love it. I love it. I have so much. I want to know more. I mean, like, again, like I come in thinking it's all gambling and, like you said, the red light district. And that's all I'm really thinking. I honestly didn't know the rich history of Las Vegas, much more than like what happens with tourism there.
There's a hotel called the Hotel Apache, which is attached. It was actually the Hotel Mint was built over the El Dorado Club the Horseshoe. You've heard of the Horseshoe. Everybody's heard of the Horseshoe. It was just a restaurant. And Binion adapted it for the name of his hotel when they changed it from the Mint. But the Hotel Apache was built in 1932. Now, may I elaborate on this for just a
Go
little
ahead.
bit?
Go
It's the
ahead.
most haunted hotel in Las Vegas.
Okay.
The Hotel Apache, of course, all the names of the hotels back in the early days were designed to infuse a Western theme.
Mm-hmm.
Clark, in his brilliancy, said, we're going to create an Old West town after the Old West had already died.
Mm-hmm.
But the Hotel Apache was built to accommodate the workers that were getting off the trains that were going to go down and build Hoover Dam,
Mm-hmm.
which was about 30 miles to the southeast in tent cities. So when they built the Apache Hotel, it was the most resort friendly of anything you can imagine. So what's a resort in 1932? What would you think? This is what I asked my guest. What do you think is a resort in 1930? What would constitute that?
I mean, I would think hotel, like just standard hotel rooms, a pool, maybe a golf course. I don't know if that was even I would think some kind of lounge, like a parlor lounge kind of area.
Great answers.
All wrong.
But way beyond. Okay. Think about 1932. You're in the heart of the Depression. And what is luxury to you? Private bathroom
Yeah.
in every room. Before those, hotels had communal bathrooms.
Okay.
And probably a chamber pot.
Yeah.
And flushing water in the desert, not a big thing.
Yeah.
Air conditioning. Thank you, Mr. Carrier.
Mm-hmm.
The air conditioning had been invented. You remember seeing the signs of like movie theaters. People went to the movies because they had air conditioning.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the resort, this was considered a resort. No pool, no lounge, not even gambling, and an electric elevator that went to the third floor. You didn't have to walk up the steps with your luggage. That was luxury.
I guess.
That's the charm. That's the charm of the Hotel Apache. Now you get off the train. You got accepted to work for the government. You're going down. You're going to build this monstrosity of a dam that's going to last for 10,000 years of pure cement.
Mm-hmm.
And you know the last air conditioning and private bathroom is going to be, and electricity is where you're staying. That invokes a lot of emotion.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many stories of ghosts in just about every room that they have outside of the desk area, documentation of every room and what happened in those rooms that people have said has happened in those rooms.
Just a running log of
Ghost encounters or strange happenings or paranormal or weird stuff. But the coup de grace is room 400. Remember I said there's 3 stories.
Yeah.
Benny Binion went up in the attic and built his own private room that had access to the count room for the casino.
Mm-hmm.
Had a little trap door where his kids could go in. His kids did the counting for the casino.
Oh my God.
That room, it was a small room, so only they could get in there.
Mm-hmm.
But he also knew that well, you come on the tour, you'll get the story of Benny Binion.
Yeah.
Probably the nicest bad guy ever lived in Vegas. He had a trap door in this room 400 in the closet with a private secret staircase that if he got threatened, he could go through that trap door and be on the ground in his limousine in 10 seconds where his private chauffeur, Gold Dollar, was waiting for him. He always kept what they called a senorita pistol in his boot.
Mm-hmm.
Always sat with his back to the wall. He got threatened many, many times. And you got to find out the story of Benny Binion. They wrote a book about him called Blood Aces. And so when I do my research for these things, I listened on Audible. I found the Blood Aces book. It's about a 6-hour listen. It's fascinating. And that's just one stop.
Yeah.
In our tour.
Yeah. That's amazing. I guess you kind of forget, like, thinking maybe like the time periods, like you said, 1932, that's Depression time. You kind of forget about what maybe life was actually like during that time. But yet there was another layer of life that many people did not get to enjoy during that time.
We're very blessed.
Yeah, yeah. So, so interesting. I mean, just really like the richness of the history is something I never even considered with Vegas. So this is just fascinating and such good stories. You seem like a very well versed in history. Do you have a particular time period or like thing that you like with history, or is it just all history is fascinating?
I'm not a history professor. I can't. I hated history when I was in school because the way they taught history back in my day, it was a lot of dates and places, and you got to memorize. But it wasn't until I became a reenactor
Mhm.
by accident. A buddy of mine, where we like to play these board games, not Dungeons and Dragons, but
Mhm.
these little tiles, and you move them around, and you have a battle.
Mhm.
And he said, "You know what? Let's go to reenactment." And I found a guy who was a reenactor, and he said, "Come out, we'll put you in the clothes and give you a taste of it." And I was hooked. And my wife we hadn't had our daughter at that point. Our daughter grew up in the 19th century, and she's as comfortable in the 19th century as she was in the 21st century.
That's really
So
cool.
camping and reenacting and being on the actual battlefields and teaching the public was my passion. I love doing that. We had an event every fall in Michigan called Walcott Mill. There's a metro park, and we would set up on Saturday night where the public was the ghosts and we were the reality. And the guide would tell them that. He said, they're not going to pay attention to you. They don't even see you, but you're going to watch our lifestyle in that period. And you're going to hear period talking here first person. You're going to see maybe a medical scenario, guys in camp playing cards, women cooking. Maybe there's guys wrestling on the ground, whatever happened in the camps or in this refugee camps.
Mhm.
And that's how I learned to be a guide. I would take a lantern and I would take these folks from station to station. And they said, this is the most unique thing. This is the most amazing thing. So when asked to do ghost tours,
Mhm. Right. It's a no-brainer for you.
it's a no brainer. And, I wear a cap like this, or I'll wear like a Indiana Jones hat, something period style. I've got a button up jacket. Of course, when it's 130 degrees out at 9 o'clock, that stuff goes by the wayside.
Check
But
it film.
my first tour that I ever did on my own, it was 128 degrees at 9 p.m.
Oh my
And I
God.
said, I'm making how much? I'm doing this at what time? And I got to go home and get up in the morning. But I loved it. And that's the thing about the Ghost City tours is that it's not the pay. Let's face it, it's not the pay. It's the passion.
Mhm.
And anybody that would want to become a Ghost City tour guide, uh, go into it with that mindset because you're going to give those folks an experience that they're going to remember the rest of their lives. They're going to be talking about.
Mhm.
And encourage everybody to take pictures.
Yeah.
Take pictures because you never know what's going to come out that camera.
Yeah, we've seen some crazy pictures come back from tours, and there was one in Nashville. I think it was late summer, maybe early fall that came back. And I was like, I was there last summer. I was like, there's no way that's not real. I'm like, there's no way it can't be real though. And then you see there was one, I think 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago from Charleston or Savannah. There's someone in a tree, like a child in a tree. I was like, where did the kid come from? Like, who's taking this picture and whose kid is that? And the things you capture are just stunning.
We have an amazing photograph that was taken early when the tour first started
Mhm.
of a face in a window at the Las Vegas high school. And I've never been able to reproduce it. Supposedly, it was taken by a guest and the story that I weave around that, the phrase, we found Mr. Petrie. And what happened back in the day, and then they find this. It really works good. I will tell you, as a fan of Gettysburg,
Mhm.
I'm very very excited one day to go and see your store there. That is mecca for ghost hunting, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will tell you, when I was involved in the filming of Gettysburg, I was only there for 2 days. It was just a very fleeting thing. But the guys that were there on set, because they filmed the movie off the battlefield, where they could actually be on the battlefield, but it's not part of the national park.
Mhm.
they had told us that they had problems keeping security guards because they were seeing ghost regiments
Mhm.
and ghost figures, and it was a Confederate field hospital.
Mhm.
They weren't seeing reenactors.
Mhm.
Ron Maxwell and his crew beat those guys to death daily, so they were sleeping. They were seeing apparitions,
Mhm.
and you know, Gettysburg's. How many books have written about Gettysburg ghosts?
Yeah. Yeah, it's the stories that we hear out of Gettysburg are, and there's another one there. Their pictures are pretty incredible too. But just the stories, and you almost go expecting to see something. And if you don't see something, I think you consider yourself lucky. Because it's just such a normal occurrence there. And anytime I talk to Andy, our store manager in Gettysburg, he always has stories and people he met and their stories. And there's something very, I don't know what maybe not wholesome, but something very just they want to share their
It's
experiences.
organic.
Yes, yeah. They just want you to know everything about Gettysburg, and it goes beyond what we do on tour.
So if you want to know about Gettysburg, no, I'm joking. I'm not going to get into that. You know, there's T-shirts out there that say, "I spontaneously break into historical facts." You know,
You just got to work them into everyday conversation.
right. May I touch on some of the paranormal stuff?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So, you know, ghost shows, Bigfoot shows are all the rage now on streaming channels. That does wonders for us. It's great. And God bless Josh Gates and what he does with his expedition series. Expedition X is, you know, that's a little bit like what we do, but embellished. But what they show is technology. They show the ghost hunting technology, the REM pods and the K2s. I carry a K2 on my tours, and I always ask, who wants to be my volunteer?
Mm-hmm.
You know, inevitably, it's usually the person that paid for it because they're the ones who want to be there.
Right.
Say, okay, it's the K2. For those of you who don't know what a K2 is, I should have brought it in, but I didn't. It's a little handheld device that has a series of lights. And when it's at rest and there's no response from an electromagnetic field, it detects any kind of electromagnetic impulses. So, like if you put it near your phone, you might get a little bit, but it's got to be strong, and it maxes out at about 20 milligauss. And they'll be carrying this, and I say, let me know if the lights start to go, and I tell them before we go on our tour. I start telling my stories, and that thing's going to start going off, and it does
Mm-hmm.
in specific locations,
Mm-hmm.
and they're like, I have no influence on this
Right.
except for the words that I'm saying. And when we do have a strong hit like that, the specific place that it happens was a gentleman who was killed by Benny Binion in a car bomb at his office in a garage. And I tell him as we're walking away, William, you need to stay here. Don't follow us
Mm-hmm.
because if you know anything about ghosts, they like to follow people.
Mm-hmm.
So we just you know, what is a ghost? I tell people, what is a ghost? It's history demanding to be remembered.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best answer for me
Yeah.
because that gets all the anything, you know, spiritual or supernatural. We have. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to Joe Rogan. I listen to Sean Ryan, and there's a lot of study now that perhaps the paranormal is in the quantum realm.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, entanglement. Pretty interesting stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get into it here, but I'm sure you could do a whole podcast on that.
We have whole conversations. We get lost on one 2-minute clip of something, and we're like 4 hours down, and about 3 days worth of, hey, by the way, let's go back to this again and revisit it. And that happens with a lot of things that we do. We end up on weird rabbit holes, but it somehow becomes normal with a job like this. And it's fun. It's a fun thing to think about because I think a lot of people don't actually think about the spiritual world or I always think of ghosts as they're trapped. They're trapped in between. They're restless. Some of them are peaceful and they've accepted, and other times they want revenge. And that's how I kind of think of it. Maybe it just quiets myself when I'm scared at night and I don't want to think about it anymore. But it's that I always think they're not here to harm. They're here to get help.
Well, I'm sure you heard some stories that may contradict that idea, and that's what makes ghost stories fun. But
Yes.
yes, the gentleman who taught me my paranormal training is here in Las Vegas. He has a YouTube channel, and he's very skeptical. But he became involved in that because he had an entity in his home.
Mm-hmm.
Gentleman who had killed himself. His name was Jimmy, and he said he had to help Jimmy, and he did help Jimmy move on.
Mm-hmm.
And from that, he became a paranormal investigator. So that's kind of like the backdoor end of it. Not somebody who was totally uninterested did that. Can I mention something else that I think is really interesting?
Mm-hmm.
We're on a podcast. We're on a essentially what they call a Zoom call.
Right.
And if you know anything about Zoom, especially during COVID, when a noise or a person would speak, it would light up in a green box, right?
Mm-hmm.
You had cameras and microphones. So I'm a Freemason, and the temple, the House of the Temple in Washington, D.C., did a virtual ghost hunt. This was a few years ago, where they set up cameras
Mm-hmm.
and microphones in certain locations that they had incidents in. Did a 12-hour recording, and my friend analyzed this recording, and he came up with what is known as ghost murmurs, ghosts talking to other ghosts. Now, of course, when you see the TV shows, the EVPs are always in English and they're very easy to understand. And
Right.
no, this gentleman has to speed up or slow down each sound. And he was a retired casino floor manager for craps tables.
Mm-hmm.
They were playing craps on that site. It was a funeral parlor before it became this building, and there was illegal gaming. And the words like hit, raise,
Mm-hmm.
things like that are coming through. And then a woman walked. It's a whole conversation that's captured in what they call residual haunting. He picked that up through this 12-hour program. And that's something nobody's ever really talked about, is ghosts talking to other ghosts. And murmurs. People say they live in a house or they're in a hotel and they hear like talking through the wall and there's nobody in that room. That's what he was picking up. And I think that's absolutely fascinating because nobody really thought about that.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of like what happens in the woods when nobody's there. Does the tree make the sound or does it not? And I think probably during COVID, it's one of those good things that came out of it, that people had the time to do stuff like that and to kind of host those events and kind of dig into things. I know I definitely dug way more into conspiracy theories than I ever had before. I always had my kind of fringe thoughts on things over here. And then being home all the time with COVID and listening to different podcasts, I started picking up on these weird things. And then I would slowly drop breadcrumbs into my normal conversations with people just to kind of gauge where they were, if they ever thought about it. And then I found my real friends. And it was people who want to talk about crazy things. And it was normal. And then it just became not so crazy anymore. It just became everyday conversation. And I think that's what makes it fun about this is it's just a normal interest we all have.
And as a car sales consultant, I don't consider myself a car salesman. That's a dirty word. I get to talk about those things while I'm helping these people purchase their dream vehicle. And so my that's my passion. I get to talk about things with people and get their opinions and share things with them that I wouldn't normally do. And then going, my ghost tour is my moonlight job, which is ironically that they call it that. And I'm out there on the street talking about what happened in Vegas. And people come to Vegas, you know, and I always end my tour with this. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, except for STDs and the ghosts that follow you home.
Maybe glitter as well.
Like glitter, yes.
Because that seems to stay with you.
Always.
That's very true. So besides, I guess, ghosts and kind of general paranormal, do you have other interests or other areas you like to explore?
Yes. I've been an amateur astronomer since I was about 10. I was president of the Warren Astronomical Society back in Detroit. We showed over 14,000 people Halley's Comet back in '86 when I was first dating my wife, and she came out, became passionate about astronomy. Not so passionate now, but I live in Las Vegas. Absolutely the worst place to try and do astronomy.
Mm-hmm.
Barely can see the stars. I mean, the moon is there, and the sun, but that's about it. So I have to travel outside of the city to go observing. But I've always been passionate. I chase eclipses. I've been chasing eclipses since I was 17, and got to travel some of the area that way. My other passions are cooking. I like barbecue. My wife's a manager for a warehouse club, and she bought me a smoker, a pellet smoker. With that, it ignited my excitement. And you know, there's a meme out there now that I thought was funny. It says, when you're over 40, you either get into smoking or you study Civil War and World War II history. And I'm like, how did they know about me?
Guilty. There's so many funny ones like that. It's like my grandma had it right the whole time, reading books with a cup of tea, crocheting, bird watching, tending to my garden. I was like, oh, okay. Here we are at 40, enjoying all of the same things that retired grandmas enjoy. So.
I forget who it is, but they said, you know, you don't have to turn into your parents. There's a commercial out there. You don't have to turn in. I think it's for some insurance company. But I got involved in the wood pellet smoking.
Mm-hmm.
I don't smoke otherwise, but I smoke, you know,
mm-hmm.
and the barbecue. But it's just my wife and myself and my daughter. So I make way too much food.
Mm-hmm.
I went to work for that company when I first got here in Vegas. My family business back in Michigan, we were machine tool builders. We built the machines that built the assembly lines and made precision tooling and fixtures for the automotive industry. That kind of went the way the buggy works, because that kind of precision tooling is just being from Wisconsin, you know what I'm talking about, tool and die. Okay. Mm-hmm. So moving to Vegas for family, my mother-in-law had a heart transplant. She needed my wife. When our daughter graduated high school, my wife turned to me and said, "We're moving to Vegas. Do you want to come?" So I ended up out here, and I needed a job, and I went to work for Traeger, and I went into Costco's. And so I got to talk about what I liked, and I found that to be interesting. And at that time, nobody knew what a wood pellet was.
Mm-hmm.
But now you drive through any neighborhood on a weekend, that's all you smell is that wood. So I was innovative in something and cutting edge at that time that became mainstream. And so you talk about the ghost tours. Mm-hmm. There's a lot more open-mindedness about paranormal based on the technology, and just like you said, people listening, being a little bit open-minded. You know, the religious aspects of it, that can be a little bit, you gotta tiptoe around that. But even they talk about the spiritual world.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And being a Freemason, you know, we are always looking at the fringe between the material and the spiritual. So it's interesting. All this, I feel very blessed because it all ties together for me. Yeah. And now I get to talk to you and share my passion on your podcast.
Well, you mentioned the religious aspect of it. When I do these podcasts, we always go through, you know, where would you like to go? Where's like your ideal, your dream haunted location? Mine is the Vatican. I think it's it's super haunted. I mean, I want to see where the aliens are buried. I want to know, like, show me the shrouds. I want to know all of that because I believe it to be a very, very haunted place that is just not depicted as haunted.
Be careful what you wish for.
I know.
Because I guess it was the Jubilee year, and I saw videos that the Pope had opened these doors that hadn't been opened, and the look on his face
Hmm.
that he did. And now, it's interesting. I mean, I'm also a student of or a follower of Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson,
Hmm.
and their theories on ancient apocalypse and ancient civilizations, and possibly advanced civilizations
Hmm.
that have been here on this earth, and because of certain major catastrophes have been wiped out.
Hmm.
Not saying these people were flying to Mars or anything like that, but just how do you build the pyramids?
I'm so glad we're having this conversation because if I could time travel, I'd like to go back to when the pyramids were truly built. And I want to know top down, bottom up. I want to know how it happened. I want to know who did it, how they did it, all of it. So I can come back into present time. And that is my party trick. I'm like, hey, how do you guys think the pyramids were built? I'm like, well, let me tell you a story.
Well, if I'm going to Egypt in ancient Egypt, I want to bring an electric fan and a porta john because they didn't have those back then. Trust me, as a person who's gone back in history as a reenactor, you appreciate those
Those
little.
luxuries. Yeah, I mean, there's so many things I want to know how they happened. And I joke, like, I want to go back and see how the pyramids are built just so I can come back. And that's my party trick. So I can tell people that I can answer this question for them.
This is where augmented reality and AI will help us. I really think that a lot of these mysteries will be solved through AI because it can analyze things. Not saying the videos that you see on YouTube or those are just for fun, but to actually figure out how do and they're thinking that it has to do with vibration. Vibration is everything. Um, Go back to the first line in the original text of the Hebrew Bible. The word. What is a word? It's vibration,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yep.
vibration moves the stillness.
Right. It's movement.
And with by speaking about the incidents that happen on our tours,
Mm-hmm.
we're speaking that back into some kind of reality in our minds. And what is consciousness? I'm sure you're studying that too.
Mm-hmm.
What is consciousness in the mind, or is it outside the mind?
Mm-hmm.
And all this is fascinating. And our hour-long discussion here is not going to touch on nearly enough. And my hour and a half with my guests, I have to stay on time. And that's one thing that I do is I have little cues along the route that tell me that I'm on time. There's a church at my 9 o'clock tour. I have to be at that church when the bell's tolled, that I know I'm on time. And so making yourself aware and recording what you see and hear gives you that perspective in life, makes you appreciate it. People go through life counting the hours, but they really need to make the hours count.
Mm-hmm. It's very true. It's you can so often get lost in something and then you don't realize how deep you are or yeah, at the same time how shallow it is. And when you take the time to listen to it and think about it, it's one of those, oh, I need to maybe less focus here, more focus here. And that's something that gets lost with having so much content you want to share in an hour and a half.
Watch a teenager play a video game. They are completely immersed in that.
Mm-hmm.
You could be, the house could be on fire,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where they're focused.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yes, uh, our attention span is very limited. We're really pretty much like this.
Mm-hmm.
So by doing these tours, you're taking somebody out of their comfort zone. They want to be with you. They want to hear these stories. And then they want to ponder them after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we ask for our 5-star rating.
Right.
I always ask them, please elaborate on what you enjoyed. What dropped your jaw? Was it something that I said? Was it the location? Was it the wind that blew up when we started, that kicked up when we started talking about that location? Be you smell something? Do you feel something? Do you hear something? And I think if we could prep our guests a little bit better for that, instead of just show up at this spot, be prepared, dress accordingly. You know, uh, I had I had a group of a dozen bridesmaids show up in cocktail dresses and high heels. I said, ladies, you're walking a mile and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they'd had a few before they got there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we'll take our shoes off. I said, do you know where you're at? Do you know what goes on here?
This was not their first rodeo. They have been on the city streets before walking barefoot.
I wasn't going to tell them they were city street walkers. That wasn't it wasn't up to me.
We always encourage when they book, we've been doing trying to do a better job, I guess, of encouraging guests to visit our social media pages and to check us out across every avenue. There's so much content when we onboard new guides. I'm sharing YouTube clips and social media things, and we love the feedback we get when guides participate in our things and show us their favorite haunted spots or talk about the tour or just share any kind of clip. It helps, I think, start that connection to the tour beforehand for the guests.
I had a situation. I was going to train a young lady on Sunday night, and she failed to show up. And two people walked up to me, and they said, "Are you the walking tour?" And I said, "Well, my tours don't start till later." And they said, "Oh, we were supposed to meet another tour here." And I said, "Come on, I'm going to give you a free sample." And I gave them a stop.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "What do you think?" They said, "We're definitely coming back to your tour. Yeah, we're gonna come book your tour." And because the other tour just didn't live up in many ways. So
Yeah.
there's people don't know. They come to Vegas, they don't know. And I always thank them. I say, I know you got a lot of options,
Mm-hmm.
tons of options, endless options that you could be doing right now. And we are so appreciative. I'm going to give you the best ghost tour you ever had. And when we get done, they go, yeah, you were pretty good.
Pretty good. They
Just
said,
$5. What can I say?
thanks for the escort service down the street, sir. Where do you see yourself wanting to do more with the tours? Is it learning some more of the history? Is it perfecting the deliverance of it? What's something?
Perfecting the deliverance. I got so many things in my head that I want to say.
Mhm.
And I've got the script in my head, but I will admit that I embellish on the locations way more than what the script was able to give me. I realize it's a start, but and I do use some of the things, some of the corny jokes they put in there. I have kept, but like with my props
Mhm.
and with the K2 unit, I've just tried to embellish that experience for them. That it's no extra cost to them. It doesn't take any extra time. There is an extra stop that I always tell them. I said, if we have time to build the value, I'm going to take you to one location. It's on the way. This is a church that is on the way between two stops that was built in the 20s. And the story that I have for them is one of our other guides who volunteers in the police lockup. She's a psychologist.
Mhm.
And they say that the schizophrenic, this lockup is for the mentally insane. The schizophrenic can only hear voices in their heads in their own gender and their own language. This gentleman that our guide had interviewed was hearing a woman's voice, was berating him for being so bad, and was speaking a foreign language. And it took a little bit of coaxing to get what language was this woman speaking to him. It turned out it was medieval French. How does that happen? But then we figured it out. This church that was built in the 20s
Yeah.
is known to be very haunted. Story is that there was a priest that had killed himself in the bell tower. So we always encourage them to look for orbs up there.
Mhm.
But the church is dedicated to Saint Joan of Arc.
That's who the voices were?
possibly. And there's a statue outside the church of Joan of Arc standing like this in her armor and her short hair. And it was in the 20s that the church realized they made a mistake by burning her at the stake 3 times.
Yeah.
Her heart could not be destroyed. They threw it in the Seine River just to get rid of her.
Yeah.
And her crime of heresy was because in Deuteronomy,
Yeah.
it says a woman will not wear men's clothing and cut her hair.
Mm-hmm.
But yet she saved, according to the French, she saved France from the English.
Yeah. I think this was just covered on a podcast, and I bet you heard it recently where they talked about the redacted stories.
Fox did a whole history. It was Martin Scorsese did a
Okay.
4-part series about the saints, and she was one of them.
But yeah, there was something that was recent, and they talked about her and the story behind her. The written account of it was redacted by the Catholic Church because they weren't counting on people being able to read at the way we do now. And so they're like, yeah, we know this is inaccurate, and we know this is redacted
Right.
with that.
So this church was built in the 20s, early 20s.
Yeah.
And they had a chance to name the church after St. Joan of Arc. But yet this man was hearing these voices across the street. I mean, across the street in his head. Now, he had no clue that that was St. Joan of Arc.
You hear people who have they go in a coma and they wake up and then they're speaking like Spanish, and they never knew a lick of Spanish before this coma. So where does that come from then?
Remember, we were talking about consciousness possibly being outside the mind.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the whole argument is we're just living in a simulation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a glitz in the matrix.
Yeah.
We had a whole movie series about that.
Yeah, I do enjoy that Facebook group. I think it's called like the Matrix Mysteries or something like that. That is one of my normal daily check-ins on Facebook. Is what's wrong with the Matrix today?
In Freemasonry, we talk about one of the secrets of Freemasonry. I'll give this to you. Is finding out who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Know yourself. You know, that's what was written above the doorway at the Delphi Temple 2,000 years ago when people came to ask the Oracle of Delphi a question. And it was written above there, know thyself.
Mm-hmm.
And really, that's what we're here. That's the meaning of life, is the universe experiencing itself. Why is life on Earth?
Mm-hmm.
And if ghosts are part of that experience, why are they bound to this realm?
Mm-hmm.
And do we really communicate with them? Or do we communicate on a quantum level?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I see videos and reels of people walking through cemeteries, talking to spirit boxes, and voices coming back to them. Now, is that just a clever video? Is it is that box just designed to spit out random words that would consider to be answers?
Yeah.
It would be terrifying to think that you would be conscious, dead, on the ground for eternity.
Yeah.
The idea of heaven's much, much nicer.
Yeah, exactly. Rather than 6 feet below in the cold. One thing that we touched on before was you get to be part of people's experiences on vacations and give them something really memorable to do. I always preface that when I would be interviewing guides to join our team, and I would tell them that, you get to be part of someone's experience. We want to make sure that it's a great experience and a positive experience. But then on the flip side of it, people would ask me, like, why do you want to do this job, knowing that the people who you're interviewing might not be full in on this, might not be full believers, maybe they are full believers, whatever. And I would come back and I explain to them, I think it opens a door for people, that it allows them to explore things, and it gives us an opportunity that they have a chance to learn and talk to people about this, and they end up coming out of it so invested in that they can't believe they didn't have this job before.
It's therapy. It really is. It's therapy. It's self-awareness. But what is the biggest fear of most people is public speaking.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just get up and start talking to a person. As a salesman, I've gotten over that. And that's one thing I didn't mention. I was trained at Second City. If you know what Second City is, an improv group.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
was trained in Second City. And so to me, everything is a skit.
Mhm.
Everything is an improv. People that are introverts, this would be a great therapy for them
Mhm.
because they're not talking about themselves. They're talking about something that is non tangible. And in the end, they're entertainers. We're
Mhm.
all actors. Life is a stage and we're all entertainers. And if you can embellish somebody's life a little bit better by giving them an experience, you've not only shared a little bit of yourself, you've shared better with the world. We could be talking about how to make fudge. You could be talking about how to build, the best cake or repair a house. People are entertained in many aspects.
Mhm.
And ghosts are, ghosts are almost a little bit like voyeurism. You're looking into something that maybe you shouldn't be aware of. So there's a fun aspect to that too.
Yeah, and you're telling their stories, and hopefully you're telling them well enough with respect that they're not going to follow you home that night.
My trainer that taught me, he made very clear you have to explain what you're telling them is accurate. In
Mhm.
fact,
Mhm.
I don't know if every Ghost City tour is accurate and factual,
They
but
are all researched and accurate from what we believe to be accurate and factual. Yeah.
because if you make up something or if you embellish something beyond what it's supposed to be, now you're just now you're giving negative energy, and negative energy creates negative energy. You don't want that. Those I really truly believe that if that we're telling the stories correctly, the people that we're talking about and the things that we're discussing appreciate that
Mhm.
we're there and that they're remembered.
Sure. Yeah, that's something that's kind of been a theme through all of the podcasts we've been doing is people have found different ways to pay their respects to complete strangers by telling their stories and by almost becoming attached to them in a way you would like a family member or a friend, and you enjoy talking about them, you celebrate their birthdays, you want to know just more about them, their history, how they ended up where they did, what made them interesting, different things like that. And it becomes like a piece of information you want to share, kind of like when you have a friend that you want to introduce to your other friends.
My goal is when I finally retire, I would like to continue doing tours. Go see tours, great. Foodie tours would be fun.
Hmm.
I'm not really interested in driving down to the Grand Canyon. They tried to offer that to me. 12 hours to show somebody a hole in the ground. That's not really my thing. But history is fun. Ghost City, brilliant idea, very clever. I
Hmm.
wish you guys a lot of success. I know we're getting ready to close this, but we can talk about it for hours, and I hope you'll invite me back.
Wait, absolutely. I mean, I'm telling you, I am amazed at different places I've been learning about that I thought were merely just vacation spots. I didn't know the true history, and now I understand why we have tours there. And it's because we want to share the history with those places. We want to share the people, and it's just I'm amazed at what I guess I didn't learn in school. And we talked about that before, that learning history like this in school was so difficult. You were memorizing timelines and maps. And I think had it been presented in more of a human form, I would have remembered so much more and been so much more captivated by it.
That's why I'm so proud to be a reenactor because we ignited the passion for history in our guests that came out to those reenactments. And many of the youngsters that became reenactors went on to become history teachers themselves
Yeah.
and incorporated what they learned and the experiences. And I've been to schools and I've taught these kids how to march in line and all
Mhm.
the phrases, and it sticks with them. And then that builds a patriotic uh, mindset.
Yeah. The other thing I think people realize is that teaching really looks so different than just what people do in a classroom. And that is actually when you're passionate about something, it's very easy to teach about it because you're so excited for other people to learn about it too.
I will ask anybody who's watching this podcast, talk to your elders, talk to your parents. If you still have them, you're blessed. Talk to your grandparents, get their stories, record them, document them, video, because I miss all the stories my father told me. I wish I had a recording of them.
Mhm.
Because he was in World War II and he survived the Depression as a late baby. And the thing about it is that once that goes into the air, it's gone.
Yeah.
And unless we can capture that in some way, remember it. The story is, that history repeats itself. Mark Twain said, history rhymes.
It's very true. And that's a very true thing about talking to grandparents and parents about it. I know firsthand, shortly after my grandma passed away, I got really into World War II fiction reading. And so much of that is there's so much truth in those books, and that's why I enjoyed reading it. And I had all these questions because my grandma would have been the same age as so many of these characters. And I had all these things I wanted to know more about, and I had no one left to ask. And so it was that I wish I would have known about this sooner to ask her the right kinds of questions when she was still around, just so it would kind of quench that thirst for knowledge that I did have. And that's something I really like about this job is it's okay to get a little lost sometimes in the history because it helps in other areas and kind of builds it up. So we always joke like, oh, I'm going on a rabbit hole. Like,
it's a fun job. It's
yeah.
a fun job. There are challenges, of course.
Yep. Yeah.
It's 128 degrees and these people show up and wanted you to drag them around the city.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we do. It's
Yeah.
20 degrees out and the wind is blowing and we're rain and shine. We're
Mm-hmm.
there. It's not for the money. It's for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Alan, it was so fun to talk to you today. I would absolutely love to have you back on again. I would love to know more about the history of Vegas. Might need to take a trip out there and finally cross Nevada off my list. I'll come see you on tour.
We'll show you the real secrets of Las Vegas, the secret
Yeah.
shadows of Las Vegas.
I mean, I guarantee you I would not do well in a casino. So hearing that you just briefly stop in is probably more of my vibe. And so I'm guessing that the tour would be a much better option for me than the poker table.
There are so much more to do than gambling.
Yeah, yeah.
There's so much more. And I can, there's gold mines to tour. There's national parks. There's so much to see here. The Lake Mead,
Mhm.
Red Rock, go up to Pahrump, go down to the El Dorado Canyon. There's so much to see here.
Mhm.
And brothels are still legal in Nevada. Did you know that?
I do. And I also would like to go out to Area 51 just so I could maybe find something else out there.
Be careful what you wish for.
Alan's gonna be there crossing off all my wish list. Well, thank you again. It was really
Thank
fun
you.
having you on. Thanks for being such a great guide and part of our team in Las Vegas. And we really encourage all of our guests to do your homework before you go on tour so you can enjoy your tour with Alan even more. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Hometown Hauntings. Again, make sure you follow us on all of our social media channels, and we will see you again next time.
Happy haunting.
Hometown Hauntings is brought to you by Ghost City Tours, the largest ghost tour company in the nation. With tours in over 20 cities, including New Orleans, Savannah, Charleston, and beyond, we bring haunted history to life with spine-tingling tales and expert storytelling. Ready to experience the paranormal up close? Book now at ghostcitytours.com to explore a haunted city near you.